understand the conflict until I saw a documentary at the Sanctuary for Independent Media about a year ago. Some of you were probably there. I don't remember what it was called. Does anyone remember? Okay. Were you there? Do you remember?
The documentary that was at the Sanctuary?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it's called? About Palestine, about
Israel. 5 broken cameras?
No.
Whatever it was called, I'm sure if you go on the Sanctuary for Independent Media website, you could find it. It really clearly outlined what an apartheid it is, and like that's when I first started to understand and become supportive of this.
I'm Samantha. I'm from Troy. I recently just got into the occupation of Occupy 2 years ago with what was happening with student loans. And I was hearing about this through a number of social media outlets, and I feel like the support that's coming from all of us is something that is really beneficial, and we really need to keep it up.
Hi, my name's Declan. I'm from Ireland. I grew up in British occupied Northern Ireland, and from I grew up from a child, the Palestinian people always supported us. And I'm here today to show my support and solidarity with them.
No, just speak directly.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tom. I'm from Cobleskill. I came mainly because Ben from Syracuse was going to be here today, and well, I support the movement. That's really, I really support what is happening. My background's a little bit similar to the man who was speaking a few minutes ago. I actually lived in Israel from 1972 to 1974. I was there during the Yom Kippur War. I thought Israelis were heroes in that time, 1972 to 1974. And over the years, my attitude has changed. I went back to Israel in 2001, and I came back feeling that the Palestinians lived in what the Jews would have called ghettos when they were in Eastern Europe, that Israel itself was a ghetto, but a nice ghetto, and that the word that you're now using is apartheid is really the experience that most Palestinians have, is being separated and put into just giant camps. And my attitude towards Israel has changed many times, has changed drastically over what it was way back in 1972, 1973, and 1974. What is happening now is unconscionable. I really believe it's a slaughter, and I'm disgusted that we as Americans support and give the slaughter and the unqualified, unconditional support, and hide behind words such as the Israelis are defending the borders. I think these are just words. It's hard for me to, when I dig around, it's hard for me to get to the bottom of things. I think both sides, both the extreme right and the extreme left, use language that hides the truth rather than reveals the truth a lot of times. And it's hard for me to find exactly what the truth is. I think sometimes if we really wanted to blame anyone, we ought to be blaming the British. We're double dealing way back in World War I, I think, about who was going to get Palestine. But what's happening is a slaughter. It's a massacre. I think we have to call things a massacre when we see them as a massacre and stand up against it. What these gentlemen have said previously is we have to put pressure constantly on our congressmen and senators to see things differently, to change their views. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Troy. I live and teach in Troy, and I teach history. I guess for maybe 10 years or so, I've known about the conflict, I guess more than just on a surface level, and began to sympathize with the Palestinian cause, I think, from the beginning, but it had a real shift in the way that I saw it and thought about it after I began having to teach the conflict to my students. And so, to make a very long story short, in teaching the conflict, you have to really wrestle with the issues. You have to know the history. You have to be able to present the history. And as a teacher, you try to be somewhat even, right? You try to present both sides. It became very clear, I think, very quickly that there really weren't two sides. There are two stories, there are two narratives, but at the end of the day, there's an oppressor and there's the oppressed. And in a situation like that, it's just like that sign says, respect existence or expect resistance. I think oppressed peoples the world over have a right to rebel. They have a right to throw off their oppressors. We saw it in South Africa. We saw it in the United States to a lesser extent, although of course not as close to being severe as what's happening in Palestine. And so that's pretty much it.
Hey, my name's Brendan Dunn. I live in Utica. There's several of us from Utica. I just want to say I really hope that we exchange contact information. There's a lot of people from different towns and different cities here, so I would like to sustain the pressure and continue in building the movement. If it's a BDS campaign or something else, locally and regionally. So I really hope that people go home today with new contact information, with new people. I just want to say, I guess I've been involved in the struggle for several years. I got involved really when I lived in Olympia, Washington, which is where Rachel Corrie, if you're familiar with her name, is from. She is a U.S. citizen from Olympia that was crushed to death by an Israeli bulldozer from the military, Israeli military, while she was peacefully trying to prevent a Palestinian family's house from being demolished by the occupiers. So, there's a very big movement there, and I think I'm trying to replicate that with other people in Utica. And I just want to say that I was talking to my friends earlier and saying how ridiculous it is that someone like me, whose name is pretty Irish, Brendan Dunn, and is an American whose family has been here for generations. I have absolutely no connection to Israel or that part of the world, but because my mother's mother's mother was a Jew, I have a right to return. I have a right, according to the state of Israel, to go to that part of the world to become an occupier. Meanwhile, I have friends from Gaza whose families have been there for hundreds, thousands of years, who are not even allowed to go to Israel. So that just speaks volumes to the reality of the apartheid state and colonialism and white supremacy and racism that exists in that part of the world. The idea that someone like me has some kind of right. I don't practice the Jewish faith. I don't know very much at all about the Jewish religion, but I have a right to return. So I'm trying to resist that form of colonialism. So thanks. It's really happy to see everyone.
Thanks. My name is Derek, and I think this is a good idea, asking how we first learned about the conflict, because I haven't thought about that in a long time. And I think that initially, growing up in the United States, being subject to the propaganda system of the public school system, I think that I grew up thinking, well, there's violence over there, and that's a bad thing because violence is bad, and not knowing anything really more than that. And I think it was in 2006 with Hezbollah's victory against Israel after their incursion into Lebanon that I began to see things differently, and things that, like what Josh was talking about, that there are two sides, that there's not two stories, that there's no justification for both sides, that there's only justification for one side, became very clear to me. And that it wasn't enough to call for peace in the Middle East, but victory to the people of the Middle East, that they have the right to resist and to throw off those who occupy them. And I think that we also need to take that seriously. As a white person in this country, I think that radical politics has to begin with me saying that I have to be willing to relocate myself because I'm on colonized land. I think we have to take that very seriously. We also have to support the Palestinian people in their resistance. And that means unconditional, which means we don't say that, Hamas is bad, or Hezbollah is bad, or the PFLP is bad, or any organization is bad. But no, they have the right, every single rocket that's launched, which, by the way, are mostly symbolic acts of resistance. They don't actually kill anyone. They don't do much damage. They're really symbolic acts of resistance, but every single rocket has a right to be launched. It's an unfortunate reality, but it's not Hamas's fault that those rockets are launched. Israel basically pulls the trigger, and they can stop those rockets anytime they want. So we support those resistance movement unconditionally, and we also work here in the United States against our own government. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we can do in the United States, is not to petition Israel to do something, but to actually fight against our own government, which really has enabled this colonial project to go on and sustains this colonial project. And without the support of the United States government, Israel would fall very quickly to the resistance. And that's what I hope for. And so I will do what I can in the United States to fight against my government so that the people of the Middle East and the people of the world can have freedom.